Little girl makes desperate emergency call to the wrong man. Minutes later, a CEO arrives at her house. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to the channel and type "love" in the comments. A beautiful piece of good news may come your way very soon. And don't forget to tell us where you're watching from. Marcus Richardson had built his empire on cold calculations and ruthless decisions. At 43, he commanded boardrooms with the same precision he'd once used to climb from nothing to everything. His corner office on the 37th floor of Richardson Industries overlooked a city that bent to his will, where his word moved millions and his signature changed lives. But on this particular Tuesday afternoon, as rain streaked his floor-to-ceiling windows, something felt different about the weight pressing on his chest. The phone rang, interrupting his review of quarterly projections. Marcus glanced at the unfamiliar number and nearly declined, but something made him answer. Richardson Industries, Marcus speaking. Silence. Then, the smallest, most broken voice he'd ever heard whispered through the speaker, "Grandma Ruth? Is that you? Please, we're so hungry. And Luna and Lila are crying, and I don't know what to do." Marcus froze. The voice belonged to a child, trembling with desperation that cut through his hardened exterior like a blade. In the background, he could hear soft whimpering. Other children, even younger. "Little one, I think you have the wrong number. This isn't your grandmother." A sob escaped through the phone, followed by sniffling. "Oh no, I messed up the numbers again. Mama's sleeping because she's sick, and we haven't eaten since yesterday, and Luna and Lila keep asking for food, but there's nothing left." And I thought Grandma Ruth could help us, but I can't remember her new number. And the words tumbled out in a rush of childhood panic and hunger that made Marcus's throat tighten. He'd never had children, never wanted them. But something about this little voice pierced straight through to a part of his soul he'd buried decades ago. Hey, slow down. What's your name, sweetheart?" "Chloe Patterson. I'm 6 years old, and I live on Maple Street with my mama and my little sisters Luna and Lila. They're 4 and they're twins, and they don't understand why we don't have food anymore." Her voice cracked with exhaustion and a responsibility no 6-year-old should carry. Marcus found himself standing, his forgotten reports scattered across his mahogany desk. The image of 3 hungry children, babies really, hit him like a physical blow. "Chloe, listen to me very carefully. You're being incredibly brave right now, taking care of your sisters like that. Can you tell me your address? I want to help you." Through her tears, Chloe recited an address in Riverside Heights, a neighborhood Marcus knew existed but had never visited. The address was oddly familiar, though. He realized it was only 3 blocks from where his grandmother had lived, when he was a child, in the same struggling neighborhood where a stranger had once helped them when they had nothing. As she spoke, something shifted in his chest, a warmth he hadn't felt since childhood, spreading through his ribcage like sunrise breaking over frozen ground. "Chloe, I need you to stay right there with your mama and sisters, okay? I'm coming to help you. Can you do that for me?" His voice had gentled to a tone he didn't recognize as his own. You're really coming? But you don't even know us, and Luna keeps asking for cookies, and Lila wants her favorite crackers, but we don't have any, and..." Fresh tears interrupted her words. "I'm bringing food, sweetheart. Cookies and crackers and everything else you need. Sometimes strangers become the most important people in our lives, little one. I'll be there soon." After hanging up, Marcus stared at his phone for a long moment. 3 children, 3 hungry babies, whose mother was too sick to care for them, relying on a 6-year-old to be their protector. His assistant knocked and entered, ready to brief him on the Henderson acquisition, but he waved her away. Something inexplicable was pulling him toward Riverside Heights, toward children whose desperate call had somehow found its way to his private line through what could only be called divine intervention. Within minutes, Marcus was in his black Mercedes, his driver confused by the unusual destination. As they navigated away from the gleaming towers of downtown toward the worn streets of Riverside Heights, Marcus felt his carefully constructed world tilting on its axis. He called his assistant again. "Sarah, I need you to contact Giovanni's Market, their premium location. I want them to prepare an emergency food delivery to 247 Maple Street. Everything a family with young children would need for at least 2 weeks. Charge it to my personal account and have them there in 30 minutes. The neighborhood that unfolded beyond his bulletproof windows told stories of struggle he'd forgotten existed. Small houses with peeling paint sat behind chain link fences, their yards filled with children's toys that had seen better days. Working families who counted every dollar and prayed for every blessing lived here, and Marcus realized he was about to step into a world where his net worth meant nothing, but his heart might mean everything. As they pulled up to 247 Maple Street, Marcus saw a tiny house with a red door that needed repainting, and a small garden where someone had tried to grow vegetables in soil that looked tired. The Mercedes felt obscenely out of place, but Marcus had never been more certain of anything in his life. He approached the front door and knocked gently. Footsteps shuffled inside, and then the door opened to reveal a woman who took his breath away, not because of conventional beauty, though she was lovely, but because of the strength radiating from exhausted blue eyes that had seen too much hardship but hadn't given up hope. Catherine Patterson stood before him in worn jeans and a faded sweater, her blonde hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, dark circles under her eyes, speaking of sleepless nights and endless worry. Behind her, Marcus could see 3 small blonde heads peeking around her legs, Chloe and 2 identical little girls with the same green eyes, all watching him with a mixture of curiosity and wariness. "Can I help you?" Catherine asked, confusion evident as she took in his expensive suit and the luxury car gleaming in her driveway. Before Marcus could answer, Chloe stepped forward. "Mama, this is the nice man I called by accident. He said he was coming to help us and Luna and Lila." Catherine's hand flew to her mouth, embarrassment and protective instinct warring across her features. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. She's been trying to call her grandmother, but the number changed, and we've been having a difficult time lately, and she was just scared and trying to help her sisters." Tears filled her eyes as the situation's enormity hit her. Marcus felt something crack open inside his chest, a wall he'd built brick by brick over 43 years, crumbling in the face of this family's quiet courage. "Mrs. Patterson, may I come in? I think we need to talk." Catherine hesitated for only a moment before stepping back to let Marcus enter her home. The living room was small but immaculately clean, furnished with pieces that had clearly been collected over years rather than purchased as a set. Children's books lined makeshift shelves, and artwork from 3 little artists covered every available surface. Everything spoke of love, stretching limited resources as far as they could go. Luna and Lila, the 4-year-old twins, hung back shyly behind their mother, their identical faces marked by the hollow-eyed look of children who'd been hungry too long. They were painfully thin, their blonde curls limp, and their usual childhood energy dimmed by malnutrition. "Please sit down," Catherine offered, gesturing toward a well-worn couch covered with a handmade quilt. "I need to apologize again for Chloe bothering you. She's been trying to reach her grandmother for days, and I've been." She trailed off, unwilling to burden a stranger with their troubles. Marcus settled onto the couch, noting how all 3 girls hovered near their mother like protective little shadows. "She didn't bother me, Mrs. Patterson." She sounded scared, and said her sisters were hungry, and that concerns me deeply. "May I ask what's been happening?" Catherine's composure cracked slightly. She gathered Luna and Lila onto her lap while Chloe pressed against her side, the family forming a protective circle. "I lost my job 3 weeks ago. The restaurant where I worked closed Sunday and I've been trying everywhere, but with 3 children, she gestured helplessly. Childcare costs more than most jobs pay. We've been living on savings, but that ran out 5 days ago. Mama gets really hot and shaky sometimes. Her tiny voice barely audible, and she cries in the bathroom when she thinks we can't hear her. We told her we're not hungry, so she won't be sad. But our tummies hurt all the time. The matter-of-fact way the twins discussed adult problems they shouldn't understand hit Marcus like a physical blow. He studied Catherine more carefully and saw what he'd initially missed. The slight tremor in her hands, the way she leaned heavily against the couch back, the pallor beneath her exhaustion that spoke of someone pushing her body far beyond its limits. "When's the last time you ate?" he asked gently. Catherine's cheeks flushed with embarrassment. We shared some crackers yesterday morning. There's a food pantry that opens Thursday, so we just need to make it until then." Her voice was steady, but her hands shook as she stroked her daughter's hair. The casual way she mentioned going without food for over a day while trying to shield 3 children from starvation hit Marcus like a sledgehammer. He'd spent more on lunch that day than this family had seen in weeks, and here was a woman who'd literally been starving while trying to keep her babies alive through sheer willpower and love. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. "That should be the food delivery," Marcus said, standing. "I took the liberty of ordering some groceries." Catherine started to protest, but Luna perked up at the word food, and Lila's stomach chose that moment to rumble audibly. The hope that flickered across 3 little faces made any argument impossible. Marcus opened the door to find delivery workers with bags and boxes, enough food to stock a small store. As they carried everything to the kitchen, Chloe's eyes grew, wide with wonder, and the twins clung to their mother in disbelief. "Is this real, Mama?" Luna whispered. "Is all this food really for us?" Catherine couldn't speak, tears flowing freely as Marcus directed the workers to fill her empty refrigerator and cupboards. When they finished, her kitchen looked like a grocery store commercial. Fresh fruits and vegetables, milk and eggs, bread and cereal, snacks for the children, and enough supplies to last weeks. "I don't understand," Catherine managed when the delivery workers left. "This must have cost." "It cost nothing compared to what it means," Marcus interrupted gently. "Catherine, 24 years ago I was 8 years old, living with my grandmother after my parents died. We were so poor we ate cereal for dinner most nights. A stranger helped us once, really helped us, and it changed everything. I've been successful beyond my wildest dreams, but I've never had the chance to pay that kindness forward, until today." Chloe tugged on his jacket. "Mr. Marcus, can Luna and Lila have cookies now? They've been really good even though they're hungry." Marcus knelt to the twins' level, his heart breaking at their shy smiles and hollow cheeks. "They can have anything they want, sweetheart. Why don't you show them all the good things we brought?" As the girls explored their suddenly full kitchen with the reverent wonder of children witnessing a miracle, Marcus found himself watching Catherine with growing concern. Something else, an attraction that caught him completely off guard. Even exhausted and stressed, she possessed a natural beauty, an inner strength that drew him like a magnet. "You have remarkable daughters," he said softly. Chloe's maturity, the way the twins support each other, the love between all of you, that doesn't happen by accident. That's the result of exceptional mothering under impossible circumstances. Catherine wiped her tears, struggling to maintain composure. "They're everything to me. I would do anything, give up anything to protect them when their father left." She took a shaky breath. "I promised them they would always have me, always have love, even if we didn't have anything else." Marcus felt something shift permanently in his chest. This wasn't just attraction. This was recognition of something he'd been searching for his entire life without knowing it. A family built on love instead of obligation, strength instead of wealth, hope instead of cynicism. What would it take, he asked carefully, to make sure they never have to be hungry again? The question hung in the air between them as Chloe and the twins explored their treasure trove of food with the careful reverence of children who'd learned not to take abundance for granted. Luna had discovered a box of animal crackers and was sharing them one by one with Lila, both girls nibbling slowly to make each treat last. The sight of 4-year-olds rationing cookies because they'd been taught scarcity as a survival skill made Marcus's throat tight with emotion. "I don't know how to answer that," Catherine said softly, watching her daughters with eyes full of love and lingering fear. "I've been trying so hard to figure it out on my own. 3 weeks of job searching, and the few positions I've found either don't pay enough to cover childcare for 3 children or require evening hours when I need to be home with them." Marcus studied the family dynamics as the girls played. Chloe had automatically taken charge, making sure Luna and Lila each got equal portions of everything, her 6-year-old shoulders carrying responsibilities that should have belonged to adults. The twins moved in perfect synchronization, sharing everything without being asked, their bond so strong they seemed to communicate without words. "Tell me about their father," Marcus said gently. Catherine's expression hardened slightly. "Trevor left when the twins were 18 months old, said 3 children under 4 was more than he'd bargained for, especially 2 at once. The twins don't remember him, and Chloe barely does. It's been just us for over 2 years now." The fierce protectiveness in her voice told Marcus everything he needed to know about her character. She wasn't looking for someone to rescue her. She was a fighter who'd been knocked down by circumstances beyond her control, but hadn't given up. "What kind of work were you doing?" he asked, genuinely curious about the woman who'd managed to raise 3 remarkable children while facing hardships that would have defeated many people. "I was head chef at Romano's, the upscale Italian place downtown. I worked my way up from prep cook over 6 years, even going to night school for my culinary degree while pregnant with the twins. When they closed, I lost everything. My salary, health insurance, the professional references I'd spent years building." She gestured helplessly. "Starting over at 38 with 3 children feels impossible some days." Marcus made mental notes about health insurance and professional references. "What would your dream look like if circumstances were different?" Catherine's face transformed with unexpected passion. "I've always wanted to open my own catering business, specializing in family celebrations, weddings, anniversaries, reunions. Food that brings people together and makes memories. I had it all planned out before Trevor left, even had a business plan and potential investors interested." She laughed softly, but there was deep sadness in it. "I used to dream about having my own commercial kitchen, creating signature menus, building something the girls could be proud of. Mama makes the most amazing birthday cakes," Chloe called from the kitchen, where she was helping the twins arrange crackers on a plate. "She made Luna and Lila a Princess Castle cake for their last birthday, even though we didn't have much money. It was so beautiful people thought she bought it from a fancy store." Marcus felt pieces clicking into place. A solution that would help Catherine while satisfying his own growing need to remain connected to this extraordinary family. "What if I told you Richardson Industries is looking for someone to completely redesign our corporate hospitality program? We host dozens of events each month, board dinners, client presentations, holiday parties. We need someone with fine dining experience who can also handle large-scale catering." Catherine stared at him in disbelief. "Are you offering me a job?" "I'm offering you an opportunity," Marcus clarified, though they both knew his mind was already made up. "The position comes with full benefits, including premium health insurance for you and the girls. The salary would be enough to support your family comfortably while you save toward your catering business dream. And the professional connections you'd make could open doors you never imagined. Tears welled in Catherine's eyes again. I don't understand why this is happening. This morning, I was lying awake at 4 a.m., wondering how I was going to tell my daughters there was no food for breakfast, and now... She gestured helplessly at her transformed kitchen. Marcus reached across the small space between them and gently covered her hand with his, feeling a jolt of electricity at the contact. Sometimes the universe has plans we can't see. Chloe's call wasn't random. It was exactly what all four of us needed. The twins had wandered back into the living room, their bellies finally full, and were curled up together on the couch like sleepy kittens. Chloe sat beside them, gently stroking their hair, with a tenderness that spoke of the mother figure she'd been forced to become far too young. "Mr. Marcus," Luna said sleepily, "are you going to be our friend now?" Before Marcus could answer, Lila added with the directness only children possess, "Mama smiles different when you're here. Like when she used to smile before Daddy went away." The innocent observation hung in the air, heavy with possibilities none of them had expected to consider. Marcus looked into Catherine's startled blue eyes and saw his own surprise reflected there, along with something that looked suspiciously like hope mixed with fear. "I'd very much like to be your friend," Marcus said carefully, his voice gentle but his eyes never leaving Catherine's face. "All of your friend." Catherine's breath caught, and for a moment the careful walls she'd built around her heart to protect herself and her daughters wavered. Here was a man who'd appeared like an answer to prayers she'd been afraid to pray, who looked at her children with genuine care, and at her with something that made her feel beautiful despite her worn clothes and exhausted state. As if sensing the shift in the room's emotional temperature, Luna climbed down from the couch and approached Marcus with the fearless curiosity of a 4-year-old. "Do you have a family, Mr. Marcus?" she asked, tilting her head with that serious expression children wear when asking important questions. Marcus felt his chest tighten. "No, sweetheart, it's just me." "That must be very lonely," Lila observed from her spot on the couch, her identical face reflecting her twins' concern. "We're never lonely because we have each other and Mama and Chloe. But you don't have anyone?" The simple question from a 4-year-old hit harder than any business competitor ever had. Marcus had convinced himself that solitude was strength, that independence was freedom. But sitting in this warm living room, surrounded by a family who loved each other fiercely, despite having so little, he realized how empty his life had become. "Sometimes I am lonely," he admitted, surprising himself with his honesty. "I have a big house and a successful business, but I don't have what you have. People who love me just because I exist, not because of what I can do for them." Catherine watched this exchange with growing amazement. In her experience, successful men like Marcus didn't reveal vulnerability to anyone, much less to children they'd just met. But here he was, sitting on her worn couch, speaking to her daughters, with the kind of authentic emotion that couldn't be faked. "You could come have dinner with us tomorrow," Chloe suggested hopefully. "Mama always makes enough food, even when we don't have much. She says sharing makes everything taste better." Marcus looked at Catherine, his expression carefully neutral despite the hope in his eyes. "Only if your mama thinks that's a good idea." Catherine felt her resolve wavering under the combined assault of 3 hopeful little faces and one man whose presence had already begun healing wounds she'd thought were permanent. I suppose that would be okay, if you really want to." "More than okay," Marcus said softly. "It sounds perfect." Luna had settled herself comfortably against Marcus's leg, treating him with the immediate acceptance children reserve for people their instincts trust completely. "Will you read us a story?" she asked, pointing to the stack of library books on the coffee table. "Mama's voice gets all scratchy when she's tired, but yours sounds strong." Catherine started to protest that they shouldn't impose further, but Marcus was already reaching for the books. "I'd love to. What's your favorite?" "The one about the princess who saves herself," Lila exclaimed, bouncing slightly on the couch. "She doesn't need a prince because she's brave and smart, and she figures everything out on her own." Marcus found the book, a story about a princess who used her intelligence and courage to save her kingdom, and began reading in a rich, warm voice that immediately captivated all three girls. Catherine found herself relaxing for the first time in weeks, watching this powerful businessman transform into someone gentle and nurturing as he brought the story to life with different voices for each character. As he read, Catherine noticed details that spoke to his character. The way he automatically adjusted his position so Luna could see the pictures better. How he paused to explain unfamiliar words without making Chloe feel childish for not knowing them. The genuine delight in his expression when the twins giggled. And his funny voices for the animal characters. When the story ended, Luna was fast asleep against his side, and Lila was fighting to keep her eyes open. Chloe, ever the responsible big sister, gently shook her twins awake. "Come on, sleepyheads, time for bed." "Will Mr. Marcus tuck us in?" Lila asked drowsily. Catherine felt panic flutter in her chest. This was moving too fast, getting too intimate. These children had already been abandoned by one father figure, and she couldn't bear to watch them get attached to someone who might disappear when the novelty wore off. But Marcus seemed to understand her hesitation. "How about I say good night from here, and then your mama can do the tucking in like always," he suggested gently. "That's a special job for mamas." The girls accepted this compromise readily, giving Marcus careful hugs that he returned with surprising tenderness. As Catherine led them toward their shared bedroom, she heard Luna whisper to Lila, "I like him. He smells like safe." When Catherine returned to the living room 20 minutes later, Marcus was still sitting on her couch, but he'd tidied up the scattered books and folded the quilt the twins had been using. Such a small gesture, but it spoke of someone who noticed details and cared about maintaining the order of her home. "They're beautiful children," he said as she sat down across from him, leaving careful distance between them. "But I can see how exhausted you are. How long have you been doing this completely alone?" Catherine's careful composure finally cracked. "Completely. 2 years, 4 months, and 16 days, she whispered, "since the morning Trevor walked out with a suitcase and a note saying he couldn't handle the responsibility anymore. The twins were so little they kept asking when Daddy was coming home, and Chloe blamed herself, thought she'd done something wrong." Marcus felt fury rise in his chest at the thought of a man walking away from this extraordinary family. That was his loss and his failure, not yours or theirs. "Some days I believe that," Catherine admitted. "Other days, like today before you called, I wonder if I'm failing them. If they'd be better off with someone who could provide for them properly, who didn't have to choose between electricity and groceries." "Catherine?" Marcus's voice was firm but gentle. "Look at your daughters, really look at them. They're polite, kind, intelligent, generous with each other, and absolutely devoted to you. Children don't develop those qualities by accident. That's the result of exceptional parenting under impossible circumstances." Tears she'd been holding back for weeks finally came in earnest. "I just love them so much, and I'm so scared I'm not enough, that my love isn't enough to protect them from everything they're missing." Without thinking, Marcus moved to sit beside her on the couch, offering his handkerchief and a presence that radiated strength and safety. "Your love is everything. It's what's made them who they are. But you don't have to do this alone anymore. Not if you don't want to." Catherine looked up at him through tear-blurred eyes, seeing something in his expression that made her heart race with possibility and terror in equal measure. "Why?" she whispered. "Why are you doing this? You could have anyone, anything. Why us?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment, struggling to find words for feelings he'd never experienced. Because, for the first time in my adult life, I feel useful for something that actually matters. Because when Chloe called me by accident, it felt like coming home to a place I'd never been. Because when I look at you and your daughters, I see everything I didn't know I was missing. "Can we keep him, Mama?" Chloe asked with devastating innocence. "Please?" He makes the scary feeling in my tummy go away, and Luna and Lila are smiling. Again, for the first time in years, Catherine Patterson found herself wanting to say yes to something that terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. And Marcus Richardson, who'd spent 43 years convinced he was meant to face the world alone, discovered he desperately wanted to be kept. 3 weeks after that first desperate phone call, Marcus Richardson found himself living a life he'd never imagined possible. Every evening after work, instead of returning to his empty penthouse, he drove to Maple Street, where 3 little girls waited for him with drawings, stories, and hugs that made his chest tight with emotion he was still learning to name. Catherine had started her new position at Richardson Industries, transforming their corporate hospitality program with the same fierce dedication she brought to mothering. Watching her command his executive kitchen with professional grace while maintaining the warmth that made every event feel like a family gathering, Marcus found himself falling deeper in love with her strength and talent. But tonight felt different. As Marcus pulled into the familiar driveway, he noticed Catherine's car wasn't there. Chloe appeared at the front door before he could knock, her face tight with worry that made his stomach clench. "Mr. Marcus, Mama had to go to the hospital. Mrs. Rodriguez from next door is watching us, but Luna keeps crying and asking when Mama's coming home." Chloe's 6-year-old composure was cracking under the weight of responsibility she shouldn't have to carry. Marcus knelt to her level, his hands gentle on her shoulders. "What happened, sweetheart? Tell me everything." She was making dinner and suddenly got really dizzy and fell down. She said she was fine, but her hands were shaking really bad and she looked so pale. Mrs. Rodriguez said she needed to see a doctor right away. Tears spilled down Chloe's cheeks. What if something's really wrong? What if she has to stay there? What if... Hey! Marcus pulled her into a hug, his heart breaking at the fear in her voice. "Your mama is one of the strongest people I've ever met. The doctors are going to take good care of her, and I'm going to take care of you and your sisters until she comes home." Inside, he found Luna and Lila huddled together on the couch, their identical faces streaked with tears. Mrs. Rodriguez, a kind older woman who'd become Catherine's closest friend in the neighborhood, approached with obvious relief. "Oh, Mr. Richardson, thank goodness you're here. Catherine collapsed about an hour ago. She's been pushing herself so hard, working all day and then coming home to care for these girls. I think her body finally said enough." Mrs. Rodriguez's weathered hands twisted with worry. "She made me promise not to call an ambulance because of the cost, but I drove her myself. She's at Riverside General." Marcus felt a cold fury at the thought of Catherine suffering alone because she was worried about medical bills. "Thank you for watching them. I'm going to the hospital now, but first..." He turned to the girls, his voice gentle but firm. "I need you 3 to be brave for just a little longer. I'm going to check on your mama and bring her home if the doctors say it's okay. Can you do that for me?" All 3 girls nodded solemnly, but Luna's lower lip trembled. "Will you tell Mama we love her and that we're being good?" "I will tell her exactly that," Marcus promised, kissing the top of each blonde head. "Mrs. Rodriguez, would you mind staying until I get back? I'll compensate you for your time, of course." "Nonsense," the older woman waved away his offer. "These babies are like my own granddaughters. You just bring their mama home safe." 20 minutes later, Marcus strode through the emergency room doors of Riverside General with the same commanding presence he brought to boardrooms, but his heart was pounding with fear he'd never experienced in any business crisis. At the information desk, he encountered his first obstacle, "I'm sorry, sir, but we can only release patient information to immediate family members," the receptionist explained apologetically. Marcus felt frustration rise in his throat. Technically, he had no legal relationship to Catherine or her children. They weren't engaged, weren't even officially dating. He was simply a man who'd fallen in love with a family and was discovering that love didn't automatically grant rights. "Please," he said, his usual authority replaced by raw emotion. "Her name is Catherine Patterson. She has 3 young daughters who are terrified right now. I just need to know if she's okay." The receptionist's expression softened at the genuine desperation in his voice, but she shook her head. "I understand, but hospital policy—" "Marcus?" He turned to find Catherine approaching from the treatment area, moving slowly but under her own power. She looked pale and exhausted, but her eyes lit up when she saw him. "What are you doing here? The girls are fine. Mrs. Rodriguez is with them, and they're worried sick about you." Marcus reached her in 3 strides, his hands hovering uncertainly around her shoulders, wanting to pull her close but unsure of his boundaries. "What did the doctors say?" Catherine's composure crumbled slightly. "Severe dehydration, low blood sugar, exhaustion. Apparently, I've been running on fumes longer than I realized." She looked down at her hands, shame coloring her voice. "I've been so focused on making sure the girls ate properly that I wasn't taking care of myself." Marcus felt something fierce and protective surge through his chest. "Catherine, you can't pour from an empty cup. Those girls need their mama healthy." "I know. The doctor gave me IV fluids and wants me to follow up with my regular physician, but—" She gestured helplessly. "The bills for tonight alone will take months to pay off, and if I need more tests or treatment—" Marcus made a decision that felt as natural as breathing. "You don't need to worry about that. I'm taking care of it." Catherine's head snapped up, her blue eyes flashing with a pride that reminded him why he'd fallen in love with her strength. "Marcus, no, I can't let you—" "Yes, you can." His voice was gentle but implacable. "Catherine, I love you. I love your daughters. When someone you love is hurting, you help them. It's that simple." The words hung between them in the fluorescent-lit hallway, the first time either of them had spoken the truth they'd both been feeling for weeks. Catherine's eyes filled with tears, but her expression remained conflicted. "You barely know us," she whispered. 3 weeks isn't enough time to know if what you're feeling is real or just novelty." Marcus cupped her face gently in his hands, his thumbs brushing away tears that had started to fall. "Catherine, I've spent 43 years knowing exactly who I was and what I wanted. I built an empire, commanded respect, accumulated wealth that most people can only dream of. But I never knew what it felt like to come home until I walked into your living room. I never knew what it meant to be needed until Chloe called me by accident. And I never knew what love actually was until I watched you fight for your daughters with nothing but courage and determination." A sob escaped her throat. "I'm so scared, Marcus. Not just about money or my health, but about this, about us. The girls have already been abandoned once, and if you decide this is too much, too complicated—" "I'm not going anywhere," Marcus said firmly. "Not unless you tell me to leave. And even then, I'd probably just sit in my car outside your house hoping you'd change your mind." Despite everything, Catherine laughed through her tears. "That's slightly stalkerish." "Desperate times," Marcus replied with a small smile. "Now, can we please go home? 3 little girls are waiting for their mama, and I promised them I'd bring you back safe." As they walked toward the exit together, Catherine leaning slightly against his side for support, she was finally allowing herself to accept. Neither of them noticed the hospital chaplain watching from near the nurse's station with a satisfied smile, as if he'd witnessed something he'd been quietly orchestrating all along. 2 months into their new routine, Marcus thought he'd found his rhythm in this complicated dance of becoming part of a ready-made family. He'd moved his home office to the Richardson Industries building so he could leave work earlier, spending every evening on Maple Street helping with homework, reading bedtime stories, and falling deeper in love with Catherine and her daughters. The girls had bloomed under the security of regular meals, stable routine, and the presence of a man who treated them with genuine affection. Luna and Lila had started calling him Mr. Daddy Marcus, while Chloe, more protective of her mother's heart, maintained careful distance even as she clearly adored him. But on this rainy Tuesday evening, Marcus arrived to find chaos instead of the usual warm welcome. Chloe met him at the door with tear-streaked cheeks and news that made his blood run cold. "He came back," she whispered, glancing nervously toward the kitchen where angry voices could be heard. "The man who used to live here. He's yelling at Mama, and the twins are scared and hiding in their room." Through the kitchen doorway, Marcus could see Catherine facing off against a man he immediately recognized as Trevor, the father who'd abandoned this family when they needed him most. Trevor was shorter than Marcus had imagined, with the kind of weak chin and shifting eyes that spoke of someone who blamed others for his failures. But what made Marcus's hands clench into fists was the aggressive way he was leaning over Catherine, his voice loud enough to frighten children. "Think you can just replace me with some rich guy and pretend I don't exist? Those are my kids too, Catherine. I have rights." Catherine's voice was controlled, but Marcus could hear the strain underneath. "You gave up your rights when you walked out, Trevor. You haven't called, written, or sent a single dollar of support in over 2 years. You don't get to show up now and disrupt their lives. I was going through a hard time. I needed space to figure things out. That doesn't mean I stopped being their father." Trevor's voice turned wheedling, manipulative. "Come on, Cat. We were good together once. We could be good again. I've changed. I've got my act together now." Marcus stepped into the kitchen doorway, his presence immediately shifting the room's energy. Trevor looked up, and Marcus saw recognition flicker across his face. He knew exactly who Marcus was, probably had been watching and planning this confrontation. "Mr. Patterson, I presume," Marcus said evenly, his voice carrying the kind of quiet authority that made grown men reconsider their life choices. "I think it's time for you to leave." Trevor's face flushed with anger and embarrassment. "And who the hell are you to tell me to leave? This is my family, my house." "Actually, it's Catherine's house," Marcus interrupted calmly. "Her name is on the lease, and these children have been legally abandoned by you for over 2 years. You have no claim here. I'm their father," Trevor snarled, stepping closer to Marcus with false bravado. "No matter how much money you throw around, that doesn't change. Blood is blood." Marcus felt rage build in his chest, not the cold, calculating anger he used in business, but something primal and protective that threatened to override his usual control. Being a father isn't about biology, Trevor. It's about showing up. It's about 3 a.m. fevers and homework help and bedtime stories. It's about putting 3 little girls' needs before your own comfort. You're not a father. You're just a sperm, a donor with delusions of importance. Trevor's face went red, and he took another step forward. "You think you can just buy your way into my family? You think throwing money around makes you better than me?" "No," Marcus said quietly, his voice deadly calm. "What makes me better than you is that I've never once made those little girls cry by walking away from them. What makes me better is that I know their favorite bedtime stories, their food allergies, what makes them laugh and what scares them at night. What makes me better is that when Luna has nightmares, she calls for me now, not you, because I'm here, Trevor. I show up." Catherine had been watching this exchange with growing amazement. She'd never had anyone defend her and her daughters with such fierce protectiveness, such unwavering certainty that they were worth fighting for. "This isn't over," Trevor snarled, backing down but trying to save face. "I'm getting a lawyer. I'm..." Getting custody. These are my kids, and some rich bastard isn't going to steal them from me. By all means, get a lawyer, Marcus replied smoothly. I look forward to explaining to a judge why you abandoned 3 children for 2 years and only returned when you discovered their mother was involved with someone successful. I'm sure the court will be very interested in your sudden parental instincts. After Trevor stormed out, slamming the door behind him, Catherine collapsed into a kitchen chair, her hands shaking with adrenaline and fear. He means it, Marcus. He'll try to take them. He's vindictive enough to put the girls through a custody battle just to hurt me. Marcus knelt beside her chair, taking her trembling hands in his steady ones. He can try. But Catherine, I've been thinking about this for weeks, and tonight just confirmed what I already knew. He took a deep breath, his voice soft but certain. Marry me. Catherine's eyes went wide with shock. What? Marry me. Not because of Trevor, not because of legal protection, but because I love you. I love your daughters. I want to legally adopt them, give them my name, make sure no one can ever threaten their security again. Marcus's voice grew stronger, more confident. I want to wake up every morning knowing I get to be part of this family for the rest of my life. Tears streamed down Catherine's face. Marcus, it's too much. You don't have to sacrifice your freedom just to protect us. Sacrifice? Marcus laughed, the sound full of genuine joy. Catherine, you've given me everything I never knew I wanted. A home that feels like love instead of just expensive furniture. Children who hug me like I matter. A woman whose strength and courage inspire me to be better than I ever thought I could be. Marrying you wouldn't be sacrifice. It would be the smartest decision I've ever made. From the doorway came a small gasp. They turned to find all 3 girls listening, Chloe holding Luna and Lila's hands protectively. Their faces showed hope mixed with the fear of children who'd learned that good things could disappear without warning. Does this mean you'd be our real daddy? Luna asked in a whisper, her 4-year-old heart laid bare. Marcus looked at Catherine, waiting for her answer, his entire future hanging in the balance. And Catherine Patterson, looking into the eyes of the man who'd proven his love through actions rather than words, finally allowed herself to believe in forever again. 6 months later, on a perfect spring morning in the gardens of Richardson Estate, Catherine Patterson was about to become Catherine Richardson in a ceremony that felt orchestrated by heaven itself. The estate's rose garden bloomed in full splendor, as if nature itself was celebrating this union that had transformed 4 lives in ways none of them could have imagined. Marcus stood at the altar his wedding planner had created beneath an arch of white roses and baby's breath, his hands steady despite the overwhelming emotion in his chest. Beside him stood his best man, his longtime attorney, who'd handled the adoption papers that made him legal father to 3 extraordinary little girls just 1 week earlier. The adoption had been finalized without opposition. Trevor's threatened custody battle had evaporated when Marcus's legal team presented evidence of abandonment so comprehensive that Trevor's lawyer had advised him to disappear quietly rather than face court. The guests were an intimate gathering of 50 people, Catherine's closest friends, Marcus's business associates who'd become genuine friends, and neighbors from Maple Street who'd watched this love story unfold with the satisfaction of people who believed in happy endings. Mrs. Rodriguez sat in the front row, dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief, having appointed herself honorary grandmother to the girls. Soft music began, and Marcus's breath caught as the processional started. First came Luna and Lila, now 6 years old, and radiating joy in matching pale pink dresses, scattering rose petals with the serious concentration they brought to all important tasks. Their blonde curls bounced with each step, and their identical smiles could have powered the entire city. Behind them walked Chloe, now 8 and serving as junior maid of honor. She'd grown 3 inches in the past year, her confidence blooming under the security of a father's love and a stable home. Her dress was a deeper shade of pink, and she carried a small bouquet with the dignity of someone who understood the significance of this day for her family's future. Then the music swelled, and Catherine appeared on the arm of her father-in-law. To be Marcus's Uncle Robert, who'd flown in from Seattle and immediately understood why his nephew had fallen so completely for this extraordinary woman. Catherine was radiant in a simple but elegant dress that complemented her natural beauty. Her blonde hair swept up in a style that showcased the diamond earrings Marcus had given her, not for their value, but because they'd belonged to his grandmother, the woman who'd raised him and taught him that real wealth was measured in love. As she walked toward him, Marcus felt tears threaten for the first time in decades. This woman, who'd been surviving on crackers and courage a year ago now, moved with the confidence of someone who knew she was cherished. But it wasn't designer clothes or financial security that had transformed her. It was love, pure and simple. Love that had healed wounds, built dreams, and created a family from the pieces of broken hearts. When Catherine reached the altar, Marcus took her hands and whispered, "You're beautiful," his voice rough with emotion. "So are you," she whispered back, her eyes sparkling with unshed tears of joy. The ceremony was officiated by Pastor Williams from the neighborhood church the family had begun attending, a man whose warm smile suggested he'd seen the hand of Providence in bringing these two souls together. As they exchanged vows they'd written themselves, there wasn't a dry eye in the garden. "Catherine," Marcus said, his voice carrying clearly across the garden, "a year ago I thought I had everything a man could want. I was wrong. I had things, but I didn't have purpose. I had success, but I didn't have joy. I had a house, but I didn't have a home. You and your daughters gave me all of that and more. You taught me that love multiplies rather than divides, that strength comes from vulnerability, and that the best adventures happen not in boardrooms, but in living rooms filled with laughter and crayon drawings. I promise to love you fiercely, protect our family fearlessly, and never forget that the greatest wealth is the love we share." Catherine's vows came through tears that spoke of a heart finally free to hope without reservation. "Marcus, when Chloe dialed your number by accident, I thought it was the worst mistake we could have made. I was wrong. It was the miracle we'd been praying for without knowing it. You didn't just rescue us from hunger and hardship. You showed us what it means to be truly safe, truly loved, truly home. You became the father my daughters never had, and the partner I never dared to dream of. I promise to love you with the same fierce determination I've always loved my children, to support your dreams as you've supported ours, and to never forget that our love story began with the simple faith of a 6-year-old who believed strangers could become family." When Pastor Williams pronounced them husband and wife, the cheer that went up from their daughters could probably be heard 3 blocks away. Luna and Lila rushed forward for hugs, while Chloe waited her turn with the patience she'd learned, but eyes shining with happiness. "Are we really truly a family now?" Lila asked as Marcus lifted her into his arms. "Forever and always," Marcus promised, kissing her cheek before reaching for Luna and pulling Catherine and Chloe into their group. "Embrace." Later, at the reception held in the estate's ballroom, Marcus found himself watching his new family with wonder. Catherine moved gracefully among their guests, accepting congratulations with the poise of someone who'd learned she deserved every blessing coming her way. The girls charmed everyone they met, their joy infectious and their bond with Marcus obvious to all who watched them interact. The transformation in all of them over the past year was remarkable. Luna, once painfully shy, now confidently introduced herself to strangers as Luna Richardson, her chest puffed with pride at her new name. Leela had discovered a talent for making people laugh with her spontaneous dance moves and infectious giggle. And Chloe, sweet, responsible Chloe, had finally learned to be a child again, knowing she no longer had to carry the weight of protecting her family alone. Marcus's business associates, initially surprised by his sudden acquisition of a ready-made family, had quickly fallen under the spell of three charming little girls who could discuss everything from quarterly reports to their favorite Disney movies with equal enthusiasm. His CFO, David Chen, was currently being lectured by Luna about the proper way to frost a cupcake, while his head of marketing found herself in an animated discussion with Lila about whether unicorns could fly faster than airplanes. "You know," said Marcus's longtime friend and board member Janet Walsh, approaching with a champagne flute and tears in her eyes, "in 30 years of knowing you, I've never seen you smile like this. Those girls have performed a miracle." Marcus glanced around the ballroom that had been transformed into a fairy tale setting at the girls' request, twinkling lights, flower arrangements at child height so they could see them, and a dessert table that looked like something from a princess story. "They've taught me what really matters," he admitted. "A year ago, I would have been networking at my own wedding. Tonight, all I want to do is dance with my daughters and watch my wife laugh." Speaking of his daughters, they were currently the center of attention near the gift table, where they were helping Catherine read wedding cards aloud. Marcus moved closer to hear Chloe's clear voice reading a card from their old neighbors on Maple Street. "Dear Richardson family," Chloe read carefully, sounding out the bigger words, "we are so happy for your new beginning. We watched Catherine raise these beautiful girls with so much love, and now we get to watch Marcus discover what it means to be a daddy. May your home always be filled with as much joy as you've brought to our neighborhood. Love, the Martinez family." "And this one's from my old boss at Romano's," Catherine exclaimed, unfolding an elegant card. "She says she's opening a new restaurant and wants to hire me as head chef when I'm ready." Catherine's eyes sparkled with the possibility of pursuing her culinary dreams now that she had the security to take risks. Marcus wrapped his arms around his wife from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder as they watched their daughters carefully organize the gift cards. "Are you interested?" he murmured in her ear. "Maybe," Catherine said softly, "but not for a while. Right now, I want to focus on being Mrs. Richardson and watching our girls grow up in their new home. The career dreams can wait. Family comes first." The word family still sent warmth through Marcus's chest every time he heard it applied to them. He'd gone from being a man who ate alone in expensive restaurants to someone who looked forward to family dinners where conversation ranged. From kindergarten drama to business strategy, often in the same sentence. During the father-daughter dance, a new tradition that included all three girls, Marcus held Luna and Lila while Chloe stood between them, all of them swaying to music that felt like a promise of better days ahead. The song was "You'll Be in My Heart" by Phil Collins, chosen by the girls because, as Luna had explained, it's about families that choose each other, like we did. "Daddy," Chloe said softly, still testing out the word she'd finally given herself permission to use, "thank you for keeping us." Marcus's throat tightened with emotion. "Thank you for letting me." "Will you really love us forever?" Lila asked, with the directness of a 6-year-old who'd learned that promises could be broken, even when we're not cute anymore and we get bigger and maybe not as good. Marcus knelt down so he was eye level with all three girls, his voice firm and certain. "I will love you when you're teenagers and think I'm embarrassing. I will love you when you go to college and don't call home enough. I will love you when you get married and have children of your own. I will love you forever and always, no matter what, because that's what daddies do." The twins threw their arms around his neck with the fierce love of children who'd finally found their safe harbor, while Chloe blinked back tears that sparkled with hope instead of fear for the first time in years. As the evening progressed, Marcus found himself in conversation with Pastor Williams, who'd performed their ceremony with the warmth of someone who truly understood the sacred nature of creating family. "You know," the pastor said, watching Catherine teaching some of the older guests a simple dance the girls had choreographed. In all my years of performing weddings, I've rarely seen such obvious divine intervention. That phone call wasn't an accident. It was an appointment that was always meant to be. Marcus nodded, thinking about the impossible series of coincidences that had brought them together. I used to think successful people made their own luck. Now I think luck sometimes comes disguised as wrong numbers and desperate 6-year-olds. And sometimes, Pastor Williams added with a knowing smile, it comes disguised as hearts that are finally ready to receive the blessings they've been waiting for their whole lives. Near midnight, after the last guests had departed and the girls had been tucked into their new beds in the mansion they now called home, Marcus and Catherine found themselves in the kitchen of all places, sharing leftover wedding cake and talking softly about the perfect day they'd just experienced. "I keep thinking I'm going to wake up," Catherine confessed, still in her wedding dress, but with her shoes kicked off and her hair coming loose from its elaborate style. "This all feels too good to be real sometimes." Marcus reached across the kitchen island to take her hand, his wedding ring catching the light, a simple band that matched hers, chosen for its symbolism rather than its expense. "It's real. We're real. This family we've built, it's the most real thing I've ever been part of." Through the kitchen window, they could see the garden where they'd married, now lit by soft landscape lighting that would guide their children's footsteps for years to come. In the distance, the lights of the city twinkled like earthbound stars, reminding them of the world beyond their peaceful estate, but no longer calling to Marcus with the same urgency. "Do you ever miss it?" Catherine asked softly. "The quiet, the solitude, the simplicity of only being responsible for yourself?" Marcus considered the question seriously, thinking about his old life of empty luxury and lonely success. "Sometimes I miss being able to shower without someone knocking on the bathroom door asking where their favorite socks are," he admitted with a laugh. "But miss the loneliness? Never. I didn't even realize how lonely I was until I experienced what it felt like to come home to love. Daddy?" A small voice called from the doorway, and they turned to see Luna in her pajamas, rubbing sleepy eyes. "I had a good dream about today, but then I woke up and wanted to make sure you were still here." Marcus's heart melted as he scooped up his youngest daughter, holding her close as she nestled against his shoulder. "I'm here, baby girl. I'm always going to be here." "Promise?" Luna mumbled into his neck, her small arms tight around him. "Promise?" Marcus whispered back, meaning it with every fiber of his being. As the evening wound down and guests began to leave, Mrs. Rodriguez approached the newlyweds with tears in her eyes. "I just want you to know," she told them, "I've been praying for this family since the day Catherine moved in next door. Single mother, 3 babies, struggling so hard but never giving up hope. I asked the good Lord to send them an angel, and he sent them better. He sent them each other. Later, after the girls had been tucked into bed in their new home, the estate Marcus had transformed from a showcase into a real family residence complete with playrooms and art spaces. Marcus and Catherine stood on their bedroom balcony, looking out over gardens where their children would grow up safe and loved. "Do you ever think about that phone call?" Catherine asked, leaning into her husband's embrace. "How one wrong number changed everything." Marcus tightened his arms around her, breathing in the scent of her hair and marveling at how perfectly she fit against him. "I think about how it wasn't wrong at all. I think about how sometimes the universe has plans bigger than anything we could imagine for ourselves." "Mrs. Rodriguez would say it was God," Catherine murmured, a smile in her voice. "Mrs. Rodriguez would be right," Marcus agreed. "Whatever you call it, fate, providence, divine intervention, something was definitely looking out for all of us that day." In the garden below, automatic sprinklers began their evening cycle, nurturing the roses that would bloom again next spring. just as love had bloomed in the most unexpected circumstances and created something beautiful beyond imagining. And if you listened very carefully to the evening breeze rustling through the leaves, it almost sounded like celestial laughter, the joy of a universe that delights in proving that wrong numbers can lead to exactly the right place, and that the most broken hearts often become the strongest foundations for the happiest families.